everybody, and welcome to the LeanTossup, the sharpest college football podcast for Week 8. My name is Robert, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, BuckMetrics. How are you doing tonight?
Konnichiwa. That's what we say in Japan. I am on assignment in Japan. Although, for you sneaky people that think this is the time to rob my house, by the time you hear this, I'll be back. So try again next time, guys.
Yeah, he's gonna. I mean, he's doing a very quick turnaround there in Japan. But yeah, so because of the short turnaround for him there, we are gonna cut it a little short this week. We're just gonna kind of stick to the preview for next week. We can talk a little bit about some of the games from last week, but we're gonna mostly stick to the preview stuff rather than the review stuff. But we'll go full review next week, and there's a lot of games to review next week. So.
Yeah. And to be honest, considering how my Trojans played, I don't want to spend 30 minutes on just that wreck. So, having said that, the Big 7 big game takeaways. Obviously, I think, and I was on a plane, so I missed some of this stuff. But, what I did hear on the national podcast, there's a lot of second guessing of Dan Lanning. There's a lot of defense of Dan Lanning, which I'm good with either way. I think that the choices to go for it on fourth down were great, even though they didn't work out. I mean, you and I are both numbers and metrics guys. We know that what we value is the sound process over just, results over some short time period. I did want to talk about this a little bit, though, in that, first of all, hey, guess who also went for 3 fourth downs and didn't get second guessed at all? Kalen DeBoer. Did you even realize this? I'm sure that you watched the game, first of all. You had to be watching this one.
I watched the massive majority of this game, yes.
Yeah.
No,
So Washington went for it on three times, and I didn't hear any second guessing at all. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we know why, right? I mean, fundamentally, we know exactly why one coach gets questioned for going on fourth down, and another coach doesn't get questioned for going on fourth down. It's all results oriented, right? And I think some people were talking about the thing is, I think he made the right calls. I agree with them. I think a lot of people are pointing to the one at the end of the game. That one is by far the most correct one, if that makes sense. It doesn't matter. Like I saw and we all saw Michael Penix on that drive because literally they got the ball basically on the fourth down. The fourth down failed. Michael Penix immediately throws a 20-yard reception. And it's like, guys, it doesn't matter if Michael Penix was getting the ball at the 50-yard line or the 10-yard line. It literally does not matter. He was still, it's Michael Penix. He has those kinds of throws that do. They have, those are a dime a dozen with Washington, right? So to say that, oh, well, they should have punted it, it doesn't matter. And the thing is, in actuality, this was actually better because you actually gave them a short field, so they scored faster, and then you actually had a chance to tie it. I think my only issue with the calling there was the fact that they should have actually tried to get the touchdown rather than, because they did kind of stall out there a little bit. They killed time. They wanted to go for the field goal to kick it overtime. They should have been far more aggressive in trying to get a touchdown rather than just kicking a field goal. I think that's my qualm at the end of the game. But the other ones, I mean, you can make an argument that they should have gone for those. They should have kicked a field goal. Well, that was points. Yeah. And I could kind of see it sometimes because I think they had 2 fourth downs there in within the 10-yard line or so that didn't go, and that's fair. I mean, those 6 points would have been nice there, but at the same time, though, they've correctly assessed that this is a game of touchdowns. It was 36-33. That's a very high-scoring game. I don't think we can sit around here and be like, well, no, they should have had, no. Those were correct. I think, honestly, the problem was they tried to go for a field goal at the end of the game, and it didn't work. And to be fair, when you look at the advanced metrics for this game, Oregon outgained Washington. They held Michael Penix to only 200-some-odd yards, which is insane. They held, 200 yards is amazing for Michael Penix just to hold him to that.
Yeah.
And again, if this game isn't in Washington, if this is a neutral field, which the Pac-12 championship game would be, I think this game could easily have a different result.
I agree. Interesting. To my eye, it just looked like Oregon was the better team for most of the game. what I did was, this is kind of an interesting exercise. Even though to my eye Oregon was the better team, if you just kind of look at the performance, offensive and defensive efficiency, and I run it through my metrics, and I love when this happens. I actually come up with for the game. I have an expected point differential of Washington by 2.8 points, and when that lines up with the final score, that's very satisfying. But what was really interesting, if I just take out the 3/4 downs and then the subsequent defensive possession by Oregon, when I take those out, actually Oregon comes to a point expected point differential of plus 3.8. So I think the decision was right. I think that literally everything else was wrong in terms of the execution on the plays. You had, I don't know what it is, that just had to be just unbelievable to see the one guy slip, a running back slip again on a 4th down. That's just nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Knicks just threw a horrible pass on one, and then at the end of the first half, the one at the end zone, the play call, I'm not a fan of. You got a compacted field, then you're going to run everybody to the right to make it even more compacted and more crowded. I think that's really where, if you take that and then the subsequent defensive possessions, the execution there was where it was won or lost, and it wasn't the players. It was basically, I think, the players and the coaches just making some pretty bad calls and executions. So, a little bit of a different take. I don't want to be one of these, national guys that just has the lazy take. I saw some whole column about, well, Lanning clearly made the wrong decision because they lost. It was reckless. Okay, well, I don't know. The more I go along, the more I see a big divide between college football reporters and actually sound analysts. You see where I'm going with that, and it just drives me nuts. It's these reporters that are asked for analysis, and they just, they clearly don't know the better aspects of the game, and it's kind of funny yet frustrating to see them just kind of make these horrible cases in some instances.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Second takeaway from the big games. um, Pretty much the same crowd has been saying, yeah, well, I know USC, you were living on borrowed time, just a matter of time before this is going to happen. Well, you know what? If you can point me to anybody that actually predicted, hey, USC's offensive line is really shaky and they're going to lose this game and they're going to cause a horrible game by Caleb Williams, I will retweet. I will do everything to promote that person as being a genius. It is so frustrating to see all these I told you so's when these people, I don't know if they didn't watch the game, if they don't know better. The defense has clearly been a problem for USC all season. And what happens? They were actually extremely good. Their ranking, their defensive ranking in my metrics, they went from 106 to 66th in one game. They were really, really solid. They only missed 2 tackles the entire game. What happened was the offensive line got completely pushed around. Caleb Williams had an apex of -1. I mean, this is by far the worst game he's had. And, he wasn't great, but he was, he had guys in his face the whole time. So I don't know, just a little bit of venting here. The I told you so's are just driving me nuts without anybody really kind of showing understanding of really what happened and being intellectually honest enough to say, well, they lost, but I didn't see this coming.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? People are like, oh, well, their defense was bad, but the defense was not the problem. I think there was 1 or 2 pick sixes or something, or no, there was like a punt.
Both
There's a
within
punt
the
return.
5-yard line.
Yeah,
And
there was like a lot of bad things that happened, and I think there was a punt return touchdown, and that last one was really killer because that was when USC was finally coming back into the game. They were down, I think, 11, and then all of a sudden you get basically a kickoff return touchdown, and that just is like, it's just killer, right? Because you kick it deep, you get a stop, USC gets the ball back, I think down 11 sometime in the third, I think. Like, it's just and I think that was the problem. The problem was not the defense. The defense was actually pretty okay, honestly. But we have our narratives, and therefore the narrative has to say that it was the defense, right? And the interesting thing, though, is how will this affect? The interesting thing is how will this eventually affect Caleb Williams' draft stock, right? Is this now the beginning of if he has a couple more bad games like this, our NFL Scout's going to be like, yeah, okay, maybe he's just a little too showy. No one's really been able to stop him from doing anything. Maybe he shouldn't be the first overall pick. That's kind of my takeaway, is the fact that it's a possibility here that this may have been peak like Caleb Williams #1 overall, and we may actually be looking at like he might eventually slide to like second to Drake May. That might be what we're looking at, but I don't think so, but not yet, but possibly. If Drake May, like, if they go undefeated, win the ACC, then maybe. And if he has another bad game like that, then it's definitely possible.
Yeah, you're asking the wrong guy. When you're talking about a league that drafts Daniel Jones first after his college career, I don't know. I've kind of given up on on where quarterbacks get drafted. Um, and our guy Mario
Mm-hmm.
didn't quite get everything cleaned up. Did you see this? I don't know if you saw this towards it was in the fourth quarter. When I was flipping back between this and the SC game, when the defensive coordinator got called for a penalty for running onto the field to call a timeout. Like, literally, like, he ran like past the hash. I don't know if you saw this.
No,
Did you
I
did you see
watched
the
this game,
penalty?
but I didn't see this specifically.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's just I kind of had it on in the background, and I hear Lance
No,
Guidry, and then I've never
no, I
then
didn't.
yeah. I hear Lance Guidry, and then I just then I hear, boy, I've never seen that before, and then they show him running on like past the hash mark to call a timeout, and he got flagged. So yeah, it's kind of like Bad Mario was slumbering for a while, and he's making up for it in short order. Unbelievable. All right. Just some observations, news, and notes from some other games in week 7. Dante Moore, you know, I hit on this last week. I'd been kind of tracking this for a while. The 2% interception rate that he had in non-conference was high, but understandable for a true freshman. Up to 5.4% now. He had 3 interceptions at Oregon State. I don't remember if he had another pick six, but he did not look good. He actually got pulled at one point. 3 interceptions in about 20 attempts. Not good. I apologize if I spelled his first name wrong there. But man, he is becoming the liability in Westwood, because I don't think their defense really stinks all of a sudden. But you know, kind of like what we saw in South Bend, when your quarterback and your offensive line are putting you in bad spots defensively, you can't really hold up. Michigan State, Rutgers. I just want to bring this one up, as I actually saw somebody say, "Well, geez, Rutgers just shot themselves in the foot in the fourth quarter. What a bad beat." I mean, my gosh, this game was so full of special teams errors and boners. I retweeted something that was in a foreign language that it just said slapstick, which is the only English word, and it was so perfect. You could just, it was about Rutgers and Michigan State, but it was slapstick. And I don't know how you can just look at one misplay by Rutgers and say, "Oh my gosh, bad beat." Nope, bad beat alert. Not allowed, pal. Iowa State is 4-3. I kind of put out just a crazy scenario in our preview about, hey, if I thought at some point Campbell would get tired of Deckers and just how bad he was playing. I thought at some point he might get pulled and that might turn their season around. Well, the Iowa equivalent of the FBI is kind of taking care of that for us. What's really cool is this quarterback, Rocco Becht. His dad played West Virginia tight end. Also played for the Jets. He has 3 of his 6 starts are Apex over 100, just really going up the learning curve. And he had a 172 against Cincinnati. 4-3 was, I don't think, even optimistically, I do not have this, but the defense is still as good as they were last season, which figured. But having the somehow that gambling thing has really benefited them.
Yeah, it weirdly has, right? I mean, usually when the headline is like Iowa State loses uh, starting quarterback to gambling probe, generally that season doesn't end well, but it's currently pretty good. I mean, they're 4-3. There is clearly a path to a bowl game there. And the thing is, you're starting to see this. This Iowa State team is getting better and better and better. A couple weeks ago, they actually played Oklahoma. They now on when you look online, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, Oklahoma is like 6-0 against the spread," and they kind of are, but also they're like that was it depended on when you bet that spread. I think I got a push for that spread, if I remember correctly. Either way, it was like on the nose. I think it was like the spread was like it was something like it was like 13 and they won by 12, or it was something very very like it was like a very technical cover. Like the spread was 12 and a half, they won by 13. It was like a very bare covered by like within a point. And since that Oklahoma game, this Iowa State team has been on a bit of a tear here. And again, Iowa State is a Big 12, generally a southern footprint. Footprint is around Texas, Oklahoma. Um, you don't want to have to travel to Iowa, and you don't want to travel to where Iowa State is because it's not. I think it's Ames, Iowa. Yeah, it's not Des Moines. Iowa is Des Moines, where there's a nice airport. Ames is a much smaller airport. You don't want to have to travel out to there. Um, Texas goes to Iowa State, guys.
Mhm.
Um, just putting that out there. That would be really kind of funny if that happened. But we'll see. That's still months away. That is before the second last week of the season. So that's right before Thanksgiving. So just put that out there and don't like Iowa State could shake things up a bit. I definitely think there's a possibility there.
Yeah, agree. Um, boy, Boise just gave one away. Unbelievable. They gave away a 20-point lead with about 4.5 minutes left. The real just delicious irony of this was that the analyst for the game was Dirk Cutter, who actually turned their season around and who about 5 people in the whole world seemed to realize was the actual reason that their season turned around last season. And I'm kind of wondering if he wasn't actually the coach last season, because it's just now the defense is having problems. And I honestly think that Cutter might have been, when they bring in an analyst to kind of like help an offensive or defensive coordinator or position coach, I think he might have been the offensive coordinator and also been in like kind of an analyst shadow head coach, light on the shadow, heavy on the head coach. Just really interesting dynamic watching that game play out with him as the announcer, just kind of thinking back to what actually happened last season, because that is long ago. Um, also, as predicted in a bigger picture last week, Marshall and their number one Apex defense took a big step back. Darren Granger lit them up for 118 Apex. Look for that to continue. Texas State, the over 4 wins cashes the first October special. That is in early October. Thank you very much. I will do a victory lap for that real quick. And then somehow UTEP was hiding, like I guess Matt Leinart Jr. On their roster. This guy Cade McConnell, his debut at FIU, who's a pretty good defense. This guy had a 321 Apex. My goodness, I don't know what on earth happened here. This shocked, it shocked me. Other really sharp people who live and die in the group of five were absolutely stunned. There's no way you could have seen this coming. So, if we want to kind of go back to the familiar format of what did I miss? I missed this, but I think everybody in the world missed this.
Yeah, this was nuts. I'll I'll kind of just touch on that quickly with the Utah quarterback. Now, partly that insane apex is he hit like two 80-yard touchdown passes in which the FIU defense just gave up, I think. Like he had massive clearance and he just like beautiful breadbasket throws to these guys. And that's fine, and again, 100% he could be that good with the 321 apex, but I will say that originally the line opened up with FIU as a slight underdog. They closed as a 3-point favorite. Generally, closing line value is not like, okay, if you get a couple points or whatever, okay. But generally, closing line value doesn't move functionally one full touchdown or two field goal. You generally don't have that much closing line value in a bet. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the books did not think this guy was going to be that good because
Yeah.
I don't think he didn't even have a QB passing prop. So they're like, we have no idea. And again, I will bet on regression to the mean for a kid like that rather than this is the next This is the next Caleb Williams, guys. This is next USC quarterback after Caleb Williams is going to transfer. I think, but like it was pretty fascinating though, and just shows FIU's defense is not particularly good, and I think their starting quarterback got hurt too, so it's not the greatest result there for FIU.
All right, cool. Well, with that said, let's go ahead and look ahead to week 8. Oops. And we'll go to my metrics. Looking at my top 20 teams, interesting. Washington, thank you for playing. They actually they slipped from number 1 to number 2, and look who sneaks in there, Brutus Buckeye, Ohio State. You have them 12th. Other things that are interesting. Notre Dame moves up to number 5 in my rankings. You're not as bullish on them. Liberty remains a menace. I think they're playing right now though, and they might be a little bit less of a menace. Let me see what else here.
Yes.
James Madison.
Well, one thing I will say about Notre Dame is that. Oh yeah, I'll say for Notre Dame, probably the reason I dropped them is because USC's defense has been horrible, and because the USC's defense is actually good. The model's like, oh my god, Notre Dame's offense is horrible, right? Now, although they won the game, but they had 21 points off of basically free points. So the model doesn't really look at points so much as it looks as just like, oh man, their offense was horrible against a bad defense, so therefore they must be horrible. So again, I feel like this is a bit too reactive. I'm going to make some changes this week to it. I think hopefully we have some time to make some changes this week. But yeah, I think there's reasons why I might have them a bit too low.
Yeah. And a couple new teams that ran into my top 20. Florida State, you actually have them higher since your model seems to love great quarterbacks more than mine. And then Troy sneaks in at number 19, and you have them at number 21 too. So that seems to legitimize those Trojans.
Yes.
All right. The top 20 offenses. Washington is just amazing. Again, the numbers are fluid early, and there tends to be a little bit of regression to the mean here, but this 19.8 is nuts. And the fact that they're 2.5 points ahead of Jaden Daniels, who's just torching the SEC, is just some amazing context there. And, they're a touchdown ahead of USC. USC had one bad game, but it was just one game. The interesting things here are Oregon State jumping up to number 12. And actually to a team that you can play for overs if the margin looks right. And then UCF at number 19. UCF is kind of breaking my model. I don't like what they're doing. I don't think they had a particularly good last game. It's just, I don't know. They might be that team that kind of makes light bend in my model. Anything in the top 20 offenses stick out to you here?
They're doing the same thing in my model too. UCF is doing the same thing to my model. I've got a really weird result for them versus Oklahoma, which is more than enough to make me stay away from that one. I hope Oklahoma's fine there because I've got a lot of Oklahoma futures. So hope UCF doesn't. Hope my model's wrong there, which it can be. I just thought that was a really weird thing. But yeah, a lot of these are really interesting. Kansas had a very fun week. Normally we talk about this, but we're because of the time constraints. But basically, last week Kansas barely threw the ball. I think they threw the ball for 100 yards. Had 400 yards rushing against. I don't even know who they played. Who they even play?
Oklahoma
UCF.
State.
And then this week they play. This week they played Oklahoma State, right. And this week they barely ran the ball. And Jason Bean threw for 5 touchdowns and 400 yards, and they lost. So I don't know what to make of that. It's funny that they're just this is the run week. This is it's like Madden, but if you just disable all the passing plays and then next week you just disable all the running plays, you're just all right, we're just gonna pass now. Now maybe this is matchup specific thing. That's kind of funny that they're just okay, we're gonna show we're a really good running team one week, and then we're gonna show we're a really good passing team the next week. So I thought that was kind of fun. One other note I will say about Florida State is that my model is liking them up again. And this is the thing, right? I always said they need to show that they are back to that top level, and they definitely did that against Syracuse this week. Complete domination, shut down Syracuse on the running front. That was huge because Syracuse is actually a pretty good running team, and Florida State let up way too many rushing yards against Virginia Tech 2 weeks ago. Florida State's finally starting to clamp down on the running game on the defensive front, and their offense looked really, really good. And it wasn't just massive explosive plays of like 280-yard rushes. So Florida State's finally starting to look better, and it need to be because they got North Carolina coming up there. And now with Tez Walker, man, they're looking really, really good there. So I'm
Yeah.
a little concerned if I'd be a little concerned if I was Florida State and they weren't looking too good. But they finally are turning this around. They might start becoming the team we thought they were going to be just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that ACC at the top of the ACC is looking kind of interesting now, which is a pleasant change. All right, top 20 defenses. Penn State, my gosh, just so dominant here. Couldn't find that mascot is so ugly, so I went with a golf head cover here. UCLA falls to 6 after
That's
that
cute.
that
That's
kind of
adorable,
poor
though.
showing. Thank you. UCLA falls to 6 with that bad showing in Corvallis. Interesting here. Rutgers at 13. I like that defense. Iowa State jumps up to number 14 for the first time this season in the top 20. Troy again in the top 20 on defense, looking more like the Troy that we've seen. Interesting that these Sun Belt teams kind of regress. And then Utah sneaks into the top 20. They did kind of a number on Cal.
Yeah, I see a lot of these Troys actually becoming a really, really good team. I didn't see that Troy coming. My model weird. Basically, I think it was like a Friday night play for me. Model absolutely loved Troy against Army. It was like -5.5. I took it. They won like 19-0. So not even close.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Another interesting one is Iowa. Iowa just keeps climbing up this ranking, right? We said, oh, the defense is taking a step back, and they had. And then now they've just found another gear, which they need to because they basically don't have a quarterback. So, but they've somehow figured out a way to do this. They've somehow figured out a way to turn it up a notch on defense, which normally it's like we're going to turn up a notch on offense. Most teams do that, but Iowa, nope, we're going to find a way to turn up the defense a notch. And yeah, I cannot believe, and I'll just say this: I cannot believe that this week I am seriously contemplating laying points with Iowa. I cannot believe I'm saying that, and I am honestly, additionally, seriously considering laying points with Iowa and the under as a parlay. I cannot believe I'm saying these words, but it has come to this, and I cannot believe it. But this, okay, to be fair, they're playing Minnesota, so there is degrees to this,
Mm-hmm.
but I still
Yeah.
cannot believe I'm saying those words.
It kind of strikes one as odd, although you have to look at Iowa as to go really pretend highbrow here. You have to look at them as like a Switzerland where they have an extremely strong currency. And so you just get a lot of value for your dollars. I think if you're going under, you have to kind of scale it back and do a Swiss francs to dollar conversion and just say, okay, well, normally this might be a 40, but if we just kind of knock it off for the Iowa versus everybody else difference, yeah, maybe a total of 30 is not outrageous.
I guess.
Nothing makes sense. I don't know. That's my theory.
I mean,
okay.
when you beat what's supposed to be an air raid team, what was it, like 16-7 or something?
Mm-hmm.
No, what was, I don't even know. I don't even. The score was so ugly. It was like something ridiculous and ugly. It was like 15-6. I don't even remember.
15-6.
But when you
yes.
do that to a team, yeah, I remember it being horrible and abnormal. But whatever. Did they even have it? I don't even think they had a touchdown. Did they? No. Was it just 7
No,
field? Was it just like 6? No, it couldn't. I don't even. Was it 5? I don't think it was 5 field. I think there was like a touchdown and they missed the PAT or something. Or they tried to go for 2 weirdly. I don't know. But whatever. Just a very weird game. And like, if you do that to Wisconsin, what are you going to do to what are you going to do to Minnesota? Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's my take on it. It's like, oh, okay, we're this good, but like, what are you gonna do to, like, okay, we can shut down this other team. Like, what are you gonna do to Minnesota? Like, you shut down one of the better offenses. You held Braylon Allen pretty far back. You're gonna absolutely eat this Minnesota team alive. So Yeah, I can't believe I'm gonna put an under 32.5. But yeah, sometimes when there's value, there's value.
Yep. Yeah, not a bad bet. All right, strength of record top 20. We have a new champion, Iowa. Speaking of number one, there with 3 wins above average. What's interesting is, I think that they're getting benefit from that win over Iowa State, aging nicely now as Rocco Becht gets better. If you look at Iowa's schedule, there's really no easy wins. Even my model is strangely really bullish on Utah State. So even what would appear to be like an easy win is probably less easy to uh, efficiency based models. Notre Dame jumps up back into the top 20. They had been there with that win over USC. Missouri jumps into the top 20 for the first time. Liberty finally does. Not surprising. It took them a long time. They haven't had the toughest schedule. Air Force might be like the team to look out for in terms of getting the G5 bid. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Oregon State jumps into the top 20, as does Utah. What do you think about this?
Yeah, it's interesting that Oregon State's pretty good, and Utah there as well. Um, Iowa again, kind of nuts. Florida State, North Carolina, they've actually played some good teams. A lot of that is Miami up there because we kind of North Carolina at least we weirdly like Miami, and I'm not sure exactly why still, but we do. But yeah, the Utah is weird. I don't know what to expect from them. Cam Rising might be dead. I don't know exactly. There hasn't been many updates of it. No, he's fine, but he's just not playing football for apparently a very long time. I guess I don't know. They're like, oh, I mean, it's just funny now that it was like maybe he's going to start against Florida, and it's just like it's October, and they're like, yeah, no, he's not starting. It's like, well, is he starting ever? And we're just nah, we don't know. I'm like, oh, that's great. Um, but no, Utah is interesting, and Oregon State just showing that the Pac-12 is really strong. Also, fun on here, Missouri. Missouri is like a really fun team, absolutely pasting Kentucky there this weekend. I was gonna get on them, but I got in a bit. I got there a bit too late, but I did get in on the over. Love the over there, and that one cashed pretty easily. I think it was in the third, or it was in the third or early fourth. Like with 14 minutes left of the fourth, I got the touchdown, so it wasn't particularly a sweat there, but. Shout out this Missouri team. They don't have a defense, but their offense is pretty fun. And I think they play Georgia, yeah. So that could be a fun game.
Yeah. Couple of things that you hit on there. Yeah, North Carolina gets a lot of credit because of that win over Miami. Both our models like Miami because I don't think either of our models really account for things like, Mario's just unbelievable decision 2 weeks ago or a defensive coordinator getting a 15-yard penalty that is, kind of unique to humankind. And I think at this point, we can kind of say Utah is definitely the Iowa of the Pac-12. Now, famous last words as they go to face USC. Maybe they turn it around, but I don't know. That seems to be their shtick in Salt Lake City. All right. The group of five top 10. So, like I said, I think at this point, instead of looking at the conference ratings, I wouldn't say they're set in stone, but there's a lot less fluidity. I think at this point, we'll kind of pick up a segment we had last year where we talk about who has the best chances to get the Access Bowl bid. This is not my handicapping of the best chance, but this is just my power rating of the top 10 group of five teams, so we can actually see, get some insight on who might deserve it the most. Liberty, no surprise. Once again, Liberty is a menace. This podcast brought to you by LeanTossup Sports. James Madison not eligible, but what's interesting is between James Madison at 2, Troy at 3, and down at number 9, South Alabama, the Sun Belt is really asserting itself back again as the top group of five conference. Tulane, no real shock there. Louisiana, I'm sorry, I overlooked them. That makes 4 of the top 10 is from the Sun Belt. Their offense is really, really solid. I've kind of even stopped talking about them in the top offenses because they have been there for quite a while now. Air Force, we talked about. Northern Illinois, is surprising. They really started the season off horribly. They lost to Southern Illinois, I think it was, an FCS team, but they have really come back. They are actually, I haven't met a top MAC team. I don't know if that'll hold up, but legitimately good. Utah State, I talked about them in the Mountain West, that my model just irrationally loves them, and their Fresno State is still in there after that loss at, as they call it, not Laramie, Laradice, Wyoming. Any surprises for you on here?
Yeah, I think Liberty and James Madison are really really good, and I think those two are probably the best chance for a G5 team. I think, unfortunately, James Madison again. Shout out to them for not being able to actually go to a G5 bowl game for really stupid reasons. Um, but man, like once this team is bowl eligible next year, like watch out. Like this team is gonna like open as like what -400 favorites in the Sun Belt, like
Yeah.
and like I guess as long as Liberty can somehow stop this Middle Tennessee offense, this 2-5 Middle Tennessee offense, which they're currently tied 35-35 in the last minute of the third quarter, and they may have just gotten a fumble recovery, Liberty. So if Liberty can win this game and figure out what the hell just happened on defense, and they did just get the fumble, then maybe they can actually go. They can get the Access Bowl bid. If not, then I don't know, maybe Troy, maybe Tulane. Tulane has the excuse of losing to Ole Miss because they lost their quarterback, which is actually very convenient in excusing a loss to a Power Five school. Air Force is interesting as well. I don't know if they'll ever let like a service academy school into it though, but like I think they'd probably rank them lower. Um, but like yeah, I'm actually like again when you're looking at these Access Bowl bids, like I'd love to, and I cannot wait for the bowl game of Liberty just dismantling some Power Five team that doesn't want to be there. Like Liberty's going to be like 7.5 point underdogs to some Power Five team that doesn't care. They're going to be like randomly in some random city somewhere in the U.S. in some sort of bowl that has like some company name in it or something, and Liberty is going to absolutely pace them. It's going to be great. So I'm excited for that.
Thanks for recounting my Cotton Bowl memories for last season. I appreciate that. Okay. Apex top 10 quarterbacks.
It's
A
a
lot of
little
familiar
different. A
names in
little
here.
different.
Yes, true. A couple of names that have come on here. This guy, Timmy McLean for UCF. Okay, great job by Gus to get his quarterback up there. I don't understand UCF is so bad. Now, part of their problem is on defense. Nothing about the narrative ties for UCF. And then Kyle McCord in the top 10. This surprises me. I mean, he seemed to improve at the end of that Notre Dame game and seems like a better quarterback. I don't know if I'd consider him top 10, but given his receivers, maybe he doesn't need to be a top 10 quarterback as just somebody who can just facilitate and not screw it up with that receiving core.
Mm-hmm. I think McCord is interesting because we are seeing the progression of this, and now there is pieces to this because one, um, Marvin Harrison Jr. is currently one of his Marvin Harrison Jr. and Abuka are currently his wide receivers. They will be in the NFL next year, probably both in the first round. So if you're Ohio State now, if you can replace them, which you probably can because apparently you have an unlimited supply of wide receivers, but if you can replace them, great. Um, this is now showing that hey, like they might actually have a legitimate quarterback. CJ Stroud is actually looking pretty legit. There's a chance that Ryan Day may actually improved like scouting and recruiting quarterbacks since Justin Fields, who does not look good in the NFL. So um, there's a possibility that Ohio State could have some really good quarterback. Like if Kyle, like here's the thing, and a lot of people are going to say something along the lines of like, oh well, with McCord, um, maybe we need maybe like okay, like here's the thing: if they lose to Michigan at the end of the year, people are going to be like, see, Ryan Day should be fired because that's what they say all the time, and they're going to say something along the lines of like, oh well, he just can't win the big games against Michigan, and McCord isn't there. But you know what? Like, if this is close, like I think there's a non-zero chance that they can get closer to beating Michigan than they did with C.J. Stroud. If they lose to Penn State and get either beat Michigan or get close to beating Michigan, this team looks really, really good for next year because like Penn State will probably keep Drew Aller, but like Michigan's losing J.J. McCarthy and Blake Corum and probably a bunch of pieces on that defense. So watch out for Ohio State next year is what I'm saying. Like what I'm saying right now is McCord is not going to make the Heisman run this year, but like he probably will start next year as one of the Heisman favorites. Probably next to Caden Slater if he transfers to a different school. Outside of that though. But like I could see McCord winning the Heisman next year.
You brought up something really interesting about Caden Salter and like where does he land next season? I still have to get used to that part of this game when somebody at G5 has a good season. All right, top player Ryan versus FBS only. No surprise, Rome Odunze number 1. 4 new names in here. Stephen McBride in Hawaii, interesting. Good sign for Hawaii, even though they don't really have to show in the 1-loss record. Troy Franklin, his first time in the top 10, which is surprising. He's really good. I think the reason there is just Oregon has had so many blowouts that they really haven't had to extend him and use him that much. Jalen Royal's not familiar with his work, but he might be one of the big reasons that my model likes Utah State so much. And hey, what do you know? Here's the UTEP, the other side of that UTEP magic that came out of nowhere last week. This guy, Kelly Akarayi. Apologies to him, but congratulations on making the top 10 of our player Ryan.
Yeah, the Hawaii one is fascinating because there have been very positive signs in pretty much every Hawaii game. I know people are gonna think that I'm like secretly a Hawaii fan. It's just because they play games at like midnight and I'm a night owl, so I'm like, this is great. But no, it's like Hawaii has like looked pretty like it definitely improving in every single game this year. And what we always say this with college football teams, right? Like step 1 is when these rebuilds, it's like okay, we tear everything down. And then step 2, we rebuild. Like there's a rebuilding process where basically you go down really low, then you come up a little bit. Maybe the wins don't show up in that second year because this is now Timmy Chain's second year, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So things don't always look so good in that second year. Maybe you have a lot of close losses, which they did. Again, actually came very close to covering the spread there against San Diego State. And then the third year, that's when you get like 9-10 wins. And I think that's kind of the trajectory we're looking at for Hawaii. It's like the wins aren't there yet, but this team is getting better and better and better. And I think you give it next year, I think this team is going to be a little like obviously this team is going to play random games because they only can schedule people who actually want to come to Hawaii. But like this team could actually be a very strong team in the Mountain West next year. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. In terms of looking out for season win totals next season. I'll definitely have my eye on that. Top team Ryan, no real surprises here. Only thing noteworthy is Michigan, by virtue of just crushing Indiana, jumps into the top 10 at the bottom of the top 10. Not really much to chew on there. When we look at the top running offenses, GGAB, interesting. Boise actually is in the top 10. They appear at number 8 now. Good for them. Good for my beloved guy Bush Hamden. I just don't think that when you came into this season looking at what's Boise State can excel at, I don't think it would be running the ball over the magic that Taylor Green had last season. The other thing to note here is you've got 3 offenses, Central Florida, LSU, and Michigan, that are in the top 10 in running and have a top 10 apex quarterback. Central Florida still just does not compute in that regard. The other 2, LSU and Michigan, yeah, I can buy those.
Yeah. And again, Air Force, they were on a bye, so they weren't in the top. They weren't there. Now they're off their bye. Now they have the top GGAP.
Yeah. Well,
because I think Toledo hasn't had a bye yet. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Bum lists. Look at this. The bottom 3. Here's another thing that doesn't make sense. Okay. Mitch Griffiths, Wake Forest. Yeah, that makes sense. They're struggling. Central Michigan just is feisty at times, but bad. I don't get this Daniel Richardson FAU. Nothing makes sense when it comes to FAU. Casey Thompson was bad. Now this guy's Casey Thompson was towards the top of the bum list. Now this guy runs in here. I don't know how they scored 56 points last week against Tulsa. Tulsa's defense isn't that bad. Nothing, or no, it was South Florida. Pardon me. Nothing makes sense with FAU. Nothing makes sense with FAU. Team Ryan, 2 new entrants here. Navy, that makes sense. Where have they been? They throw the ball reasonably well, but not often. And then Utah. How about this? Utah sneaks into the top 10 of the bum list for teams with Low Ryan after scoring 34 on Cal. Like I said, Utah is the Iowa of the Pac-12.
Yeah, it's they've really been relying on that defense. It started against UCLA, and they've just not been putting up points much. And yeah, it's just again, Iowa is. I don't even think Iowa wasn't even this bad last year in terms of receiving.
Mm-mm.
I don't know if this is true for this week, but I know last week, and I'd love to do a deeper dive on this at some point. Iowa didn't throw a pass to a wide receiver. Not this week, but the week before, they didn't throw a single pass to a wide receiver. So that's they're fast. It's fascinating how they're innovating through the tight end position. That's great. Good for them. Might be why they're on the lowest. They're like 7th or 5th last in Ryan. But yeah, it's interesting. Like Keegan Shoemaker, it's so funny he's on the bum list here. He like throws for like 300 yards a game. I don't even know how. Like it just he just airs it out with Sam Houston. And he just like connects with it. He gets a ton of air yards, but I think it's mostly just empty because it's not like there's interceptions there too, and just some bad stuff at times. But it's just it's funny that he's up there. Emory Jones again up there too. That's a little sad to see someone who we've hyped before.
Yeah.
There. And Mitch Griff's, like, at times he looked really good, and at times he's just looked absolutely horrendous. And he looks like Drew Lock. He's a weird little kid. I don't know. He just looks weird. But, yeah, just a weird looking... He just, like... Just that Drew Lock swagger energy. It's just a very... Yeah, I'm not... at this point, I'm not the biggest fan. He's definitely a very lower tier replacement for Sam Hartman.
Yeah. And I think Shoemaker, just to answer your point a little bit, he had a lot of interceptions and a lot of bad games to start the season. So I think that's going to drag him down for a while. Although, yeah, you look at him now, he looks, surprisingly competent at times. All right. Defensive apex by team. Michigan and Iowa State jump in here. No real surprise there. As I mentioned earlier, Marshall now down to number 6 after being number 1 for pretty much the entire season. No real surprises here for me.
Yeah, nothing much surprising here, no.
And then the top run defenses, Jacksonville State. I gotta dig. I think that they must have just. I think Eastern Michigan probably ran for 50 times for 0 yards because nice team, but I don't know if their run defense is really the best. So there's some bias there somehow. Troy jumps into the top 10, not a surprise. James Madison also in the top 10. I think that this makes sense too, as you see the Sun Belt teams playing other Sun Belt teams, and they're not going in for these paycheck games where they just get murdered to get run up on. So that those two moves make sense. Michigan jumps into the top 10. Michigan is the only one, and Iowa top 10 run and pass defenses, and then Pittsburgh into the top 10. Hey, Pat Narduzzi won a game, and I think last week we just saw that was the example of, okay, yeah, he's been doing a crummy job coaching the team all season, but that big win over Louisville. Good job, Pat.
Louisville. Again, like Louisville the week before dismantles Notre Dame. Then they get absolutely dismantled by a Pitt team that got blown out by Virginia, that lost to Virginia Tech pretty handily. I like, and here's the thing. I know a lot of people, like, I love college football for a lot of reasons, but like random things that make no sense are not one, like, especially when I'm betting on those things, right? Like there is, and in some ways it's fun, but like there is, and it was weird because the spread was only, I think, 7.5. There is not a single shred of data you could have that would lead you to
No.
believe that Pittsburgh should win that game. There's not a single data point, not a single anything. But yet Pittsburgh like absolutely destroyed them. And there's those games happen all the time in college football. And usually I'm on the better side of it. Now I didn't actually lay. I think I teased that game down. I think I teased uh, Louisville down to 1 or -1.5. But at the same point in time, the other leg lost anyway, so it doesn't really matter that much. But like, man, though, just like what a weird. I like when you look back at the games of the year, and like when you look back, it's like what happened. Like we're just gonna be like, what happened in this? Like what? How did this even happen? Maybe I'm gonna have to rewatch that game just to figure out how that even happened. But yeah, just a fascinating game there with Pittsburgh with Pitt and Louisville.
Yeah, if you want to watch more Pitt football, knock yourself out. I would advise against it, and I would just say this is just what Pitt and Narduzzi is. It's just, hey, we had a big win and we crapped the bed multiple times, and that's literally what it is. So condolences to the good people of Pittsburgh that have to live with that. I'm just visiting. I don't have to live there. All right, market intelligence.
But see,
These
that's
are the
the thing,
games
right? That kind of just quickly
Go ahead,
like
go.
you said it right there, that like saves his job for like an entire year now. So congratulations.
And that's why it's tough to be a Pitt fan. All right. So these are the lines that tell some kind of story that we need to figure out here. Sam Houston giving 5.5 to FIU. Now, I missed that our guy, Mr. Stokes, the quarterback at FIU, was hurt. I think that is probably explaining this. I don't know another universe otherwise in which Sam Houston would be giving more than 2.5 to anybody in FBS.
Sam Houston being favored against anybody in FBS.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of weird because that guy came in and he was like not horrible, which like is kind of all I need to be like, okay, fine, let's do this, right? Like my model does have a very small sample size, and I still have Florida International as a favorite, but like in those like now it was really here's the thing. This game is going to be fascinating because if you go back and watch the end of that UTEP FIU game, it's like every pass was either like an amazing pass or like directly to the other team, and they just dropped it. Like, and it's there was no in between. There's no like, oh, that pass wasn't that like, oh, that went to like that he threw that to the sidelines. Like, no, that was like to a safety. That pass went directly at a safety, and the safety's just like, what? This is going towards me. I'm just going to drop this ball. But then there's also like, man, that was an insane pass. I can't believe he even did that. But then also there's the time he's going to throw it to a linebacker. So this is going to be a fascinating game. I look forward to seeing the score, the box score of whatever happens here. I'm assuming wherever Sam Houston is, I'm assuming it's somewhere in Texas. I don't know, to be honest. I think it's somewhere in Texas, probably.
Yeah, it's a suburb of Houston. And what you're speaking on
that
in
makes
terms
sense.
of last week, in terms of that weird UTEP FIU game, probably informs this. I don't know how. Just looking at last week, New Mexico State UTEP at 49. Given that the average is 52 or 53 for all FBS games, I think there's probably some market skepticism on Mr. McConnell being able to repeat last week's performance against the kill machine, Jerry Kill. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is also interesting because last week New Mexico State started the first half up 28-0 and then just stopped playing. I think they're on offense. Their controller got disconnected. So I don't know what happened there. And then it was because I had the -9.5 and the -13.5, and I'm like, what are you doing? Score points. And like now, to be fair, Sam Houston scored like twice. And I think they weirdly tried to go for a 2-point, or no, maybe they got 2 field goals. I can't remember exactly what happened, but I remember it was 28 to either 13 or 14, and I'm like, just don't let them score, don't let them score. And it was a very intense like last 5 minutes to be like, please let me cover the -13.5. please let me cover the +300 alt spread in this game, please. And then they did, so that was very happy with that. But man, though, just like what a weird game and what a weird result there. But Yeah, 49 seems a bit low, but I'm not playing that a total. You're getting New Mexico State, I think, like either roughly even money, I think minus 120, minus 130, and or minus like 1.5, minus 2.5. Just lay the points in New Mexico State. Our Aggies, yes, they're going to UTEP, but it's not that far actually. So um, I think they should be okay.
Yeah, I forgot that's a rivalry game. That is a close game. All right, next one. I don't get Marshall getting only for hosting JMU. These teams are completely in different stratospheres. Now, I think part of it is, I think, the market's kind of hip to JMU. I don't think the market is hip to what a fraud Marshall's pass defense specifically is, which has been carrying them to date. Now they're facing a good quarterback, a guy who I've been touting for weeks and weeks, Jordan McLeod for JMU. I don't see this one as close. I think the market's just wrong on Marshall here. What do you think?
Yeah, I've got this as minus 14.5. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd outspread this up, 6.5, 9.5, 13.5. That's how and obviously with a healthy dosing of the -4 as well. Um,
Yeah,
that's my take on it. But
yeah. Um, Memphis at UAB, like I said last week, I think UAB is sneaky good, and it's just not showing itself through their record. This number, I think, is actually moved up to 6 now. I think I'm just ahead of the market here on this, where UAB is sneakily not nearly as bad as people think. What do you what do you think about this one?
I I don't know. I kind of I agree. I see what you're saying about Memphis. My model does not like UAB. Where is it here? Yeah, I got Memphis minus. Actually, no. Okay, I do have Memphis -3, so I do kind of have this as somewhat close. I do have like UAB under. I think 4.5 wins. So maybe a play on UAB isn't bad here, but um, we'll have to see. I think Memphis is maybe like they underperformed against Tulane last week, and they also like kind of are just not particularly good in some of those games. So UAB, it was, I think we hyped them a little bit last week, but then they got blown out. So I wasn't really on UAB last week, but maybe there's a play on them this week.
Fair, yeah. All right, Northwestern at Nebraska. I don't. And again, I've been on a plane and catching up on jet lag and all kinds of stuff. I don't know if this number. I'm expecting it to move up from the 13.5 when we put this together. Nebraska's defense is legitimately good. I think they're in the top 20, in my top 20. Northwestern has a couple games where they've scored a lot of points. I don't think that this is going to be one of them. Nebraska's offense is not dynamic, but Northwestern's not going to be one of the better teams they face this year. Probably some market reluctance to just have Nebraska giving too many points here, but I just, as the game unfolds, I just don't see this being less than a 2+ score game.
So this line has moved. It is now down to Nebraska -11.
Wow. Okay. I you agree with me, or am
Oh no,
I wrong and the
I have
market's right?
Nebraska -19 here. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, just that just makes it
yeah,
playable for both of us, I think.
I've got Nebraska huge. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
it. I
Okay.
like Nebraska here. I liked them at I liked them at -13.5. I'll take them at -11 all day. I think Northwestern is horrible. To be fair, I was about to say Scott Frost. It is not Scott Frost anymore. Matt Rule said that the Wisconsin versus Iowa game was beautiful. So maybe they were just like, okay, we're going to shave 2 points off of the spread from that comment alone. Um, but yeah, Nebraska's actually like a pretty good team. They're like, this is the thing. I mean, actually, to be fair, this was actually was this no the spread between Nebraska and Northwestern, because this was the Dublin game last year. That was what 11.5. So this is actually increased from that laughable that laughable spread from last year. But like they've earned this. This is like it's not like, well, we're just going to put a number here because it's Nebraska week 1. They could be good this year. Like after that week 1 game, Nebraska, I don't think was ever more than like score or 2 favorite. I think, or maybe they played like, um, maybe they played, I
Georgia
think,
Southern.
Buffalo and they beat Buffalo or something. But like, oh no, yeah, you're right. They would have been bigger favorites against Georgia Southern potentially. So, um, but yeah, it's when you're looking at this, I just think it's yeah, I'm taking Nebraska here.
Yeah. All right. Mississippi at Auburn. Now, I don't have the total here as I think about it. I just can't see Auburn staying with Mississippi. Auburn's defense is pretty good, but their offense is just so limited. I don't think Ole Miss's defense is that bad. Maybe this only makes sense in light of Auburn's at home. And what's the total? If there's a high total, I can see maybe that they're. I don't know. I don't get this. This just seems
50, 56,
really
56,
short.
56, 56 and a half.
I can't. Yeah, I don't see Auburn scoring that much. I mean, they're so limited on offense. Now, I don't know. This line seems short to me. What do you think?
Yeah, it is short to me too. I've got what do I have? I know it's short. I have Ole Miss minus 24, which sounds much closer to what it should be. Um, yeah, like Ole Miss is good, but to be fair, they didn't underperform against Arkansas. Maybe it's the books kind of overreacting to that. So I don't know, but I kind of think, yeah, I think I think this is a pretty clear play for Ole Miss. Now watch, we'll get messed up because this is like some sort of weird sneaky trap game or something. But like I don't see that.
Yeah. All right, Michigan at Michigan State. Just this is another one where, and my model doesn't have, my model says this line is right, but I just, I don't have decay built in or anything like that, and I just think Michigan's such a complete team, a completely different team once Arbaugh came back, that I can't see this number being any close to this. Michigan State is bad; they just find ways to screw things up. I don't think there's anything in Michigan State that's worth hanging your hat on at all. This number looks really short to me. I'm not going to override my model, but if I just, wanted some spare action, I might just throw a few dollars at Michigan here. I can't see Michigan State covering this at all.
Yeah, I've got Michigan minus 30, 30.9, so 31.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Don't see a huge difference between Michigan State and like Indiana. Roughly similar in terms of power ranking here. Both are just not good. And I like
Yeah,
Michigan obliterated Indiana. I don't think they're like, maybe they're going to obliterate Michigan State slightly less, but not like a lot less. It's going to be a similar number. It's going to be a similar result.
yeah. My buddy Ray asked on Twitter, and I got back. He said, "Man, Michigan, it's frustrating. What's their strength of schedule?" So, based on my metrics, I have them with the easiest schedule. Bless you, in all of FBS, and maybe there's an element of that built into this, but man, when we went through my metrics, Michigan, I think, was top. JJ McCarthy is a top 10 quarterback. I think they're a top 10 Ryan offense. I know that they were one of the few teams with top 10 GGAB and Ryan defense. It just, again, they haven't played much, but statistically, they're an elite team. Utah at USC. USC giving 5. This number, I think I saw this morning, it's to 6.5 or 7, which makes more sense to me. Is that correct, or am I mistaken?
I see 7, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes more sense. That just, I talked about USC earlier, and I think that actually it's weird. It's almost like that was the game they had to lose to kind of just get it out of their system. That defense, if they show anything close to what they did at Notre Dame, and with how one-dimensional that we've talked about Utah is, this could be a really low-scoring game for Utah. Now, Utah's defense is legit. If they can replicate what Notre Dame did on defense in South Bend, this could be low-scoring. But I just, that 7 seems a lot more fair than 5.
Yeah. I will say though that the caution is, I think I do have USC pretty big favorites here, but my model still weirdly is just really likes USC. And I will say that the negative signs are like because they UCLA did beat up Cal pretty well, and Cal actually has a good offense. So I do worry of this like drag out, um, long drag out game. Like if USC's defense is the same level it was against Notre Dame, great. If not, USC is in trouble, maybe. But
Yeah, yeah, I will say this too. My model, for whatever reason, has been spot on USC. It basically did not like them against the spread against Colorado or Arizona State or Arizona or Notre Dame. It basically said to bet against the Trojans versus the number, and my number was my model was 4-0 in those instances, and my model loves USC in this spot. So pretty interesting. And we'll talk that'll be coming up in a few moments here. Clemson at Miami. I get this because like I said, the model, I'm holding my head like this because it's frustrating. The model doesn't account for stupid coaching stuff. And I think that Miami's going to be the team that just kind of breaks the model and just proves it wrong. The stupidity. Um, I don't know. I'm just this is just an anguish. Are you anguished about this too? Because your model loves Miami as well.
yeah, and I completely understand why the model likes Miami. Um, Remember, there's also a decent amount of Clemson hate in there too, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
the model liked Wake Forest against Clemson, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe Wake Forest is good, but then they lose to Virginia Tech, and it's like, oh, so
Virginia
Clemson is just
Tech.
bad
Yeah.
then, right? So there's a good amount of Clemson hate in there as well as Miami, Florida. At this point, I would not classify it as love. I'd say like I'd say Miami, lukewarmness, if that makes sense. Um, but it's yeah, I'd take Miami here. I but the thing is, I'll take Miami here, but then we'll watch in agony as they screw up somehow and lose the game in some excruciating fashion, which I kind of don't hate, and I ran the numbers again, and I maybe have a different number with this. If you tease Miami with the next game, the 2.5 point dog in the next game, that's a little appetizing. I don't hate that. I kind of like that tease, to be honest with you. Now, normally you tease the 2.5, but a 3, are really going to not tease it because it's a 3? Like it was, if you're 2.5, you tease it, but if it's 3, you're like, no, I'm not going to tease it. Like it's the same thing basically. So I don't hate that, but we'll see. I'm going to debate that tease. We'll see.
Okay. Well, speaking of, sounds like we're on opposite sides of the next one here. ULL giving just 2.5 to Georgia State, which means that
Oh,
it's about even on a neutral field. I've for a few weeks now, Louisiana has been in one of my top 20 offenses, and like I highlighted, I think it was last week, the end of part one, they had the highest rated freshman quarterback in all of FBS. So I kind of think that Louisiana's offense is a little bit under the market's radar here. I don't have this as a play, but I wouldn't be surprised if Louisiana wins by more than 2.5. I'll put it that way.
yeah. I agree. I do actually. So I have. This is why I'm a little scared away from the teaser because I have Louisiana as -6. So I do agree with
Mm.
you on the Louisiana, but at the same time I have 6, so an 8.5 is pretty okay. I'm okay with that. Like I'm not playing Georgia State on the spread here, but like I could if you teased both, but I don't love it because if it's a 6, then if they score a field goal or something, then you're done. If it's a touchdown and then a field goal, then you're done, right? So I might stay away from it just for that. Like I don't hate them. Like I like the Miami Florida leg of the teaser. I don't like the Georgia State leg. So that's my concern.
Yeah, and just to wrap this up, maybe the leg to tease it to is 2 above that Michigan. I mean, if you're going to tease that down to 18, I'd grab that in a heartbeat.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. Teasing under 3 scores is nice.
Yeah.
But I usually like
Okay.
teasing games in the same same time slot. So I know I'm weird that way.
Okay, can't argue with that. All right. Any transactions you're looking at here? You could probably get a good number from you
No,
since I'm jet lagged and
I'm
okay.
I think we're good this week. Air Force, I like that now. That's pretty good after they beat Wyoming. LSU, hey, they're not in bad shape there either. Oregon, that took a little bit of a hit, but they are still alive. Penn State, so this is Ohio State versus Penn State. Here we go. This is, well, it's not technically not the battle of this, but if Penn State loses this week, their Big Ten championship hopes take a big hit, right? But then also at the same point, then
Yeah.
Ohio State's college football playoff champ points take a big bump, right? So um, we'll see. We might be cashing some of these tickets soon. I mean, we're still a bit away from Texas, but like if Texas has a bad game against uh, Texas has a bad game against if Texas were to lose to Iowa State somehow, then we're only like a Texas Tech upset away. Or there's other options. I don't think they play Kansas. Oh, no, they do play Kansas State too. So Texas, like it's not that over 9.5. If you were a very weird person to bet Texas over 9.5, you better you're not out of the clear yet. You're not out of the woods yet.
A lot of people weird by your definition. Then I'll just say that. Okay. Our plays last week, not so great for me. 2-4. You didn't have a great week. The dual models was okay. I did a really big quick calc here. I think overall people telling us would still be showing a profit of like 7 or 8%. Your mileage may vary, but overall, considering nobody's going to go. What do they say? You're never going to go poor making money. So the
Yeah,
preseason
I
upsets.
will.
Oh,
I
go
will
ahead. Go
say.
ahead.
Oh, I will say a couple ones on there. We both said like we can't bring ourselves to bet Miami against North Carolina, and sure enough, that was correct. I think Rutgers, yeah, that was they should have won and covered that spread. Um, no idea what happened with Wake Forest. The Kansas one is very weird when you look at the Kansas stat line. I have no idea how that result happened. In Air Force, I think they burst through and they would have gone up 2 scores at the end, but they decided to take a knee and they basically went down at like the 5 yard line. So um,
Ugh.
some sadness there. Yeah, there is some of those are a little sad, but it's okay. This is what we do.
All right. I lost you there for a second, but we'll move on. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. You're good.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. All right. The preseason upsets. Really good weekend for me. I had 3 coming into the last weekend. Colorado State. It wasn't easy, but they did beat Boise. Georgia State. Not so difficult. Beating Marshall, and then boy, this didn't turn out as I thought. Ball State's offense has just been absolutely horrible this season, but so that didn't happen. It coming up this week before the season, you picked Tennessee to beat Alabama, and that would still be an upset. Bama's favored by a bit, so fingers crossed and good luck to you on that.
Yeah, a lot of mine are starting to come up now. That was the big week for you. You had
Yeah.
3 upsets this week. Um, but this is a bigger week for me, and then there's a couple big weeks coming up more into November. But yeah, I think Tennessee could do it. So we'll see.
Yep. All right. And speaking of this week, here are a lot of dual model plays. So basically, just so people understand the process, I drop in to this grid what I think is going to be a play on my end, and then once I get the LeanTossup model projections, I drop them in. If they are a play per both models, I bold them. If they are not, I keep them in to document my plays here. So we have my plays and we have the dual model plays. Two of these are in process right now. Looks like our models were both off as relates to Liberty. Don't know if they just got stage fright or what against Middle Tennessee, who's kind of
Not
psychotic.
necessarily. Liberty is up 7. Now there's only 4 minutes, 50 some odd seconds left to go in the fourth. Could Liberty push down the field for a garbage time cover and make our combined model play start 1-0 on the week? Maybe. Also, Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State. Currently, it's a push right now. Western Kentucky's leading by 7 there. So.
Okay. Thank you for that update. I'm not able to see that. I turn off my phone for the podcast. Rutgers, we both really like here, and that that definitely lines up with my eyes too. Indiana is feisty, but nothing more. I think that Rutgers is legitimately okay versus decent teams, and I think it is up to 5.5 now this morning. But I'm definitely going with this one. Next one, Penn State at Ohio State. We both have the under here. This surprised me. We both have this as really low scoring, which does make sense, though, considering these are two really good defenses. Remember that we've been saying all year Ohio State's been leading with their defense, and Penn State, now the second time this season, is the number one BuckMetrics defense in all of FBS.
Yeah.
Tennessee, Alabama, we're on different
this
sides.
This one is interesting. This one is interesting. When I ran the model on this one, my first thought was going to be I was going to see something like super high scoring close game. Turns out it's a 40 points is pretty low scoring. I've got 40, you've got 33. This is a battle of defenses, which is kind of fascinating to me. That we're both like, yeah, both of these defenses are just really good, right? So I'm kind of intrigued by that there. So yeah, let's see what we've got there with this one. I want to see if our models are correct. I think both ours are saying the same thing there, which is generally a positive sign. So let's see what we could do.
Yeah. Tennessee and Alabama were on different sides. I like my under there. Next one, we're on vastly different sides. You've got almost 100 points in the Washington State versus Oregon. I think what we're seeing there is what you referred to last week as the snowball effect. You've got dueling snowballs between Cam Warden and Bo Nix and Troy Franklin and Bucky Irvin.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah.
Central Michigan at Ball State. I have to, because I have this as a play per my model, and it's a dual model play. Not happy about it. Ball State's offense is just horrible. We both really like Northern Illinois against Eastern Michigan. I'm happy to play that. We both have ODU again. It's really weird how ODU just is loved by both of our models and not so much by the market. I'm very happy to bet that one. USC Utah we talked about. You probably have a lot of the Caleb Williams snowball in your 52-point margin there. Clemson, Miami, we talked about a bit, and we are on different sides of UCLA, Stanford. Not sure what would be driving your number up to 78 there. I'm comfortable with my total of 42. Absent another Dante Moore pick 6.
Yeah, I think the model is just showing that Stanford's actually apparently pretty good at scoring, considering they did against Colorado. But UCLA's defense is pretty good, though, right? So I think this is kind of like UCLA scores, then they go with that, right? So, but again, you do have to kind of worry about the Dante Moore pick 6, though, right? So,
yeah. And then lastly, the wrong team's favored here on the right. This has not been a great money line play, although it's been pretty good versus the number. Both our models have Ball State, Old Dominion, and Miami, Florida that should be covering. I've taken all three money line, Miami, Florida, with very much clenched jaw. I'm not really happy about that, but We will see. You going to take these 3 on the money line? You think? You said it sounded like no one but Miami, since you're doing alt lines there.
Yeah, I think I'll take Ball State and probably the App State Old Dominion line, that one does intrigue me, so I think I'm going to take that one as well.
Okay. All right. Well, that is it. Thank you, everyone, for enduring the time lag and the shorter pod here. Robert, it's been a pleasure. I am going to go shopping in the Ginza district in my Tulane t-shirt. Thank you, everyone.
Sure, no one will think. See ya.